So welcome everybody to today's interview on how to build an enduring culture. So my name is Jason Lindstrom. I am the CEO of Bucketlist Rewards. I'm also been a co-founder of 3 high-growth startups. And through all these years, culture has been very near and dear to my heart. And the hosts along with me here today is Jerry Gratton. He's a good buddy, a very knowledgeable HR practitioner. Jerry has held key HR leadership positions at companies like 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He's helped to launch over 300 different franchises. And fun fact about Jerry, he's been awarded top HR practitioner in Canada 4 times. This is awesome.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason. Recognized.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I was your first customer.
Indeed,
Yeah,
you was.
yeah.
And co-hosting with us as well today is Rhys.
Hey guys.
He as well has held many key leadership positions at companies like 1-800-GOT-JUNK and You, and we're awfully excited to be chatting with you guys today. Just to get things kicked off, I can see a ton of people have now registered and arrived. We're going to start off with a short poll question. So I just launched the question. I'm just going to read it out for the sake of the attendees. So the question is, how has your workplace culture endured during COVID? And we'd love to give you guys a chance to respond to that.
Fast on the responses there. Look at that. Wow, what a fairly even distribution, but we're starting to see one result moving in the lead a little bit.
So the themes we're seeing is it looks like roughly an equal around 40%. It suffered, around 30% has stayed the same. 20% of you said it got better, and congrats, that's impressive.
Yeah, very impressive.
And a small percentage of you said culture. What culture?
Never, regardless, I think everyone's in the right place for today.
Absolutely,
yeah,
indeed. So I'm going to wrap up that question, and we'll get into it a little bit. So for an agenda, I'm going to share just a really quick background around why we're building the Culture Building Bootcamp. The vast majority of time is going to be spent with Jerry chatting with Craig. We'll have some time for Q&A. If you guys do have questions inside the Zoom webinar, there's a chance to ask those questions. So please feel free to enter those at any time throughout today's session. We'll be going through and answering those at the end. And at the end, we do have what I think is a great special bonus. So please feel free to stick around for that. So what the heck is the Culture Building Bootcamp? In summary, we're genuinely on a mission to help people leaders really build the best culture possible. And my best learning has always happened when I learn from a more senior practitioner. And that's what this is all about, bringing together great people with some really good experiences and sharing best practices and tips. And why is this conversation, I think, more timely than ever? Obviously, we're living in a new working reality. Many of you are working from home for the first time. And obviously, there's some positives that come with that. For example, there's a huge lift in productivity. The BBC said that there's been a 13% in workplace productivity, and I've seen much higher numbers than that as well. I've also read a really interesting stat that people are 20% more likely to complete their daily work when working from home. However, on the flip side, this is the bigger issue. More than ever before, there's this feeling of loneliness and isolation. I was just reading a stat that 1 in 5 people in the United States now experience isolation or loneliness, which is higher than ever before. And that kind of sets the stage for today's conversation. So Craig Forman has joined us from Culture Amp. Culture Amp is an awesome organization. They do some great surveys, employee engagement surveys, and insanely good data and analytics. And Craig is a very seasoned practitioner as well. Fun fact about Craig, he has been invited to speak at South by Southwest, which is an incredibly exclusive event. I was super impressed with that. But I'd love to turn it over to Jerry and Craig to have a conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you, Jason. And super excited to kick off our Culture Builders Work Camp with Craig. I have a ton of respect for Craig. First met him way back early days of Culture Amp, doing Culture Amp community events. I think we hosted an event once at O2E. And so really glad that, Craig, you're over in your garage and the rest of you are here in our bubble. Our families are super excited about the fact that our bubble extends to my co-hosts of the Culture Builders Academy. So let's get started with a conversation with Craig. Craig, before we get too deep into the hard-hitting questions, I think there is a question that's a burning question on everyone's mind right now. And really, I think can you tell us how you came to have the coolest role and title in HR and people and culture, working for such a great company?
Well, first of all, thank you all for inviting me. It's always an honor to be able to speak, and just share what I've learned, and that's kind of part of what I'm doing in the world. So I really appreciate the opportunity. I get that a lot. The title was bestowed upon me, and the job, but look, I love my job. I love my role. People scientist. Ironically, I started at Culture Amp and the role was insight strategist. And about 2 weeks in, they came and said, "Oh, by the way, we're switching it to people science, the team, and everybody's gonna be people scientists." And I thought to myself, I've never been a scientist in my life. Like, I don't but but it's a title. It's fun, and I enjoy it, and it's nice. I enjoy the response I get from it. But I think I'll go deeper on the question of like the role and what I'm doing in the world. And I think it's just really important to say about, gosh, 6 or 7 years ago, I got really clear on my purpose. And I mean that, like I knew it and I've been playing with it. And in my career, I had some challenges along the way, and where did I fit and what was my role in all of this? But I got clear, and I could just define it and say, I'm here to help the world work better by improving the places we work, like literally, and being able to I did that work, got clear for myself, and could communicate that out succinctly into the world. Things started to shift, not right away, but they just kept moving. And every day, as I started to get that flywheel going in momentum, saying every day, how can I do more? How can I lean in? And ultimately, I ended up at, with Achievers, and then to LinkedIn, and just starting to work in technology, focused on that. And then having the opportunity at Culture Amp as we were growing, to join this team and start to work with our clients and really dig into the data and work with the organizations, help them think about their cultures, was a dream come true. And I just, again, even from that place, just every day, how can I do more? How can I'm so passionate. I love this work. And it's taken a life of its own. And I've just, in some ways, I got to the place where I'm trusting the journey. And, like you mentioned, community building. I didn't set out to be a community builder, but if that's the vehicle that's going to help me in this mission, help transform the workplace, then that's the rocket ship I'll ride. And same with Culture Amp. It's been an amazing journey together. And they've really allowed me to lean into what I want to do in the world. So I think the message to anybody is, what are you here to do? And just do that every day, really hard, and let the rest fall where it will.
Great message. And kidding aside, I appreciate the, that leap to people scientist. I think what it also does is it brings evidence-based, harder facts into this very feel-y kind of space that we're in. And I'm definitely a feeling guy, and sitting at executive tables over the years, it's sometimes, okay, let's find out what Jerry feels about this topic. And people is a science, and I think there's a lot of evidence behind the work that we do. So joking aside, I love the title for many reasons. Let's get into this. We're talking today about enduring cultures, and I think that we know that some companies have just been so much better at doing this over time, and they've lived through the hard times, and they've made hay while the sun was shining. And so if we're speaking specifically about these kinds of companies, are the ingredients that go into making a great culture, are they different for these companies, or do you see them the same, just with different focuses? I'll just throw it over to you to maybe elaborate on that.
Well, before we go too deep in this, because I think we'll come back to this in our conversation. I think it's really important to define culture. This is something that gets thrown around a lot.
Sure, let's do
that. Right? It's like talking about love, like define love, right? It's tricky, and we'll never fully get there. We're doing our best to define it. But let me tell you how I define it, because I think it will help guide this conversation. Please. I have this big umbrella definition of culture, which is the way we do things around here. But the thing about that is that's I like that, and it really helps. But that's your family, that's your workplace, that's when you go to the grocery store. That's all of it, right? So there is a way that humans do things, and we'll come back to this as well. I think it's really fascinating that we can move in and out of multiple cultures very quickly in our day, you know, with your family, and then, like I said, to the grocery store, over to work, and how even without cognitive language around it, we understand rules and what's happening around us. However, I want to go a level deeper, which is what we're talking about, I think, today, workplace culture. You know, because I think we have to pull that out of this. My family's not going anywhere if I lose my job or financial, you know, we're together regardless, where if our organization doesn't succeed, that disappears. I like what our CEO Didier Elzinga talks about when it comes to culture. And he says, your brand is your promise to your customer. Your culture is how you deliver on that. And I say that because when we come together in an organization, we are coming together as individuals to do something on behalf of this organization, to bring something to the world. And it's the behaviors at which we are going to agree upon that we're going to do that, to do that thing. And there's lots of ways to run a bank, let's say, right? You know, you've seen what bad behaviors can look like, and we've probably seen what a great credit union, how they show up. So I just think it's really important to define that. And today, I think we'll be talking about organizational culture and like how do we come together to achieve something collectively so that the organization thrives and persists.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah. Workplace culture.
Workplace culture. So, but with that in mind, like I said, I'm sure I'll hit back on that later. I just want to get that out there. I think really the core thing that I keep coming back to is values. Is that clear set of values. You're bringing all these disparate people together into an organization, possibly the most diverse coming together of people that we have as when we go to work, and that we need to align, take all those individual humans that have their individual values and align them and then move forward. And I think that's where those organizational values come in, and they're different than personal values. It's the reason I don't like integrity or on it. Like, yeah, I expect that as an individual, but what are those individuals?
Like table stakes, right?
Table stakes. How are we together moving forward to achieve whatever the mission of the organization is? And I think that is really, like I said in that definition, that your brand is your promise, but your culture, your values are how you're going to behave to deliver that. And I honestly think that if organizations like really get clear and do that work and continue to evolve in that work, I think it's the underpinning of everything.
Yeah. That's such a great place to start. And you know, when I talk about culture, it's funny, I use almost the same words of how we do things here. But what's often people, I'm sure you get this, like, how do I create that great culture that they have over at organization XYZ? How do I create that here? Because I mean, I think that would be really cool. And I think I'm leading into this, but we know that how we do things here is different from organization to organization, and the right culture for one organization might not be the right culture for another.
Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead.
What I would say there is that it's okay to be influenced and inspired, but I do see a lot of organizations looking to almost like other things, like, well, what ERP are they using? Let's use that. Like, you can't just take somebody else's culture. So I think it's holding those both, and saying, can we look outside to learn and be inspired and influenced? But at the same time, it's like, it's your family, like, it's unique to you, to your organization, and like allowing your organization to craft what's right, like digging in and say, what are our values? Not what we want them to be, but really, like, what are we showing up? What do we rally around that we're going to own and hold on to? That's unique to us. And maybe there's some great tools or ways to influence, or we can find that from others. But I see it when we work with clients around the benchmarks in our tools, and they're really important. I get it, but we can over-index onto the benchmarks, and then all of a sudden it just becomes a game of competition with others versus how are you building your own unique culture that's going to drive what you're doing in the world for long-term success.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. You know, so let's take a leap. Let's kind of leap forward a little bit, maybe to assuming that, you know, we've defined those values really well, and we're an organization that's been around for a few years. We seem to be doing some things pretty right, and people have this shared kind of, they share these values. Their purpose is shared. How did that, you know, with the cycle of how people are sort of going through workplaces these days, what's the ways that the best companies sort of make sure that culture gets passed down? And I'll say from generation to generation, knowing that the generations are pretty short these days.
Well, you know, a couple of things. One is, I think the best companies look, values are usually pretty tricky to put your finger on. We're like courage to be vulnerable is one of ours. Trust others to make decisions. I've seen some companies that they go a step lower. These are our values and these are the behaviors. This is what you're going to see when you see those alive. And I think that's important because what it's doing is calling out how will you see how we show up here in action. So I think that's a really important one. And to your point, a solid culture almost doesn't work in generations because people will be coming in and out constantly. As long as the core is strong, that whoever comes in will adopt and keep it. So I think it's really about, and it goes into some other things I've been thinking about, is that it's about how well do we, like, honestly, not just say it, but really believe, live it. I mean, you see that in these really solid companies where you can it's almost like they're drinking the Kool-Aid, but they love that. They love that structure. They know what connects all of them, what they rally around. And as long as that holds tight, any few people coming in and out will not just destroy that because it's bigger, it's stronger. Now, in an organization where you say one thing or doing another, there's all kinds of cracks in that and ruptures in that. And as humans, we don't trust leadership. If you're saying one thing but doing another, I can't feel solid and like following you. So you're going to get fractures and small subcultures. Culture exists, period, right? There is no such thing as no culture. There's culture in prison. I mean, I was in the military. There's culture. There's lots of cultures. Culture will exist. The question is, are you intentional to organize this entire organization to move towards this goal versus, well, this team's really just self-preservation over here, and this sales team is just driving the numbers because that's what they do. And then all of a sudden you have these things that we see all the time of competition internally, or disruptive behaviors, or behaviors that are not in alignment with what we're trying to do in the world, which will ultimately slow down the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember, the days of when I used to call them, water carriers, culture, the water carriers, the people that you really would look to in the organization to kind of show the way and model that behavior. And it'd almost be more upsetting to lose one of these water carriers in the organization than it was to lose, and apologies to any of the senior leaders that used to work in my organizations, but to lose one of them, because you just be, you'd know that it was a big void to fill. Now, let's on that, I kind of purposely segue to, I know that Culture Amp has made a big effort in the last month or so, your new programs around focusing on managers.
Yeah.
And my belief, and I know you guys share this, is that managers, leaders in an organization have a profound impact on the culture. And I think what you were just talking about, the way that you ensure that the sales teams and the finance teams are experiencing the culture in a similar way, is through those leaders. Can you talk a little bit about that, the impact that leaders have, but also how, as people and culture practitioners in an organization, how do we make sure that the leaders understand that responsibility and own it?
Yeah, I'm happy you called that out, number one, because in the intro, Culture Amp for a long time really has been built around surveys, engagement, onboarding, diversity, equity, inclusion, and really how do we aggregate those large sets of data. And it really started last year when we began down the path of performance management, and now with Amplify, with those managers one-on-one. So really, like, can we take large data sets where you take a subset of data and tell us a story in a moment in time, mixed with that ongoing conversation that we need between our managers and our people that are always having, to remove bias and to support the growth and development of individuals and also measure performance. So thank you for calling that out. And it's been interesting to watch that all come together. And how do we tie all that data together to tell a bigger story?
Right.
Okay. Two sides of that. You want it from the people leader side. I mean, I think from the people leader side, we're sitting at this executive level role, looking over kind of the whole of the organization. I really think it goes back to some of the stuff we were speaking about before around supporting the journey towards who are we, how do we show up, what are our behaviors, and what are our mechanisms in place to identify those, amplify the ones that are in alignment, but also like manage and deal when people aren't living our culture. Because if that happens and nothing happens, then it again, how safe is the culture? Or so I think, and then bringing in those tools to support the scaling of that and supporting of the managers. But I say that is almost like, I think those leaders, we all own culture. Those leaders are really just supporting and like have the more like focused view of that, and how do we support the organization. But to your point, in the end of the day, we are the culture, and our managers have such a critical component to that. So I think what comes up when you're asking that question is this idea really of servant leadership and like letting go of this command and control, that at your executive levels, how are they showing up every day to support those VPs the way that they want those VPs to support those directors, that they want those directors to support, and work that down. Because I think oftentimes what managers do, they get put in a position of, you're supposed to live these values, we're supposed to support this and how we show up and how we do things. But we're not always setting or treating you that way, but you're supposed to now go down and treat the next layer next that you're taking care of that way. And it creates disruption and self-preservation and those sorts of things. So I think what we need to do is, from the top down right now, is like ask every one of those layers, how do we show up? How are we achieving our mission in that way? Support those that are with us. I'll give you an example. Like at LinkedIn, for instance, it was like the end user, always matters, or something about that. So that was like the value, like the end user matters, right? And in all of the executive meetings, they'd always leave an empty seat. And if they were ever in a situation or unsure, they'd look, and that seat represented the end user. And they said, what would this person want? So, I mean, that's just an example of how they brought that in through ritual or whatever that may be, and symbolically bringing that in and remembering, like, who are we doing this for? Are we doing this, And I believe that if we're showing up for the people that we support and saying, do the same for the people you support, that will go all the way through to ultimately your customers, and they know it and they feel it. So I think that's how we support them. We can go into more detail, but I think it's showing up, treating them the way you expect them to treat those around them. And if they don't, like holding them accountable, all of us, and vice versa, both directions.
That's right. Nothing worse than a subculture that is the leadership culture that's not aligned with the culture of an organization. And it seems ridiculous, but I've seen it happen time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, I see it in the data so often.
Yeah.
And I love that I have the opportunity to go in and say, all of the leadership, we can slice it that way, says you feel like open, honest, two-way communication, you're at 90% agree that you're doing a good job. The rest of the organization sees it at 60. Where's the divide? And in a loving way, right? They also, I mean, they're sitting kind of in their own sphere, but using data to help bridge those gaps and say what you believe is not necessarily what's really being reported. So let's lean into that.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I'm just thanks, Craig, and I'm going to just put it out for any questions that you want to have us address with Craig. Throw them in the Q&A, and Rhys is dying to be able to ask some of your questions to Craig. But in the meantime, I'm just going to forge on, or do you want to jump in?
I have one follow-up question. Earlier on, you're talking about the importance of values, and values kind of formed a foundational level or a backbone to a company's culture. Do you have any stories or tips or best practices on how to bring values alive on a daily basis? I'd love to hear your insights and kind of thoughts around that side of things.
Well, yeah, a couple. One is when you're exploring and defining your values, keep it simple. If you have, I mean, we had 3 for so long, and he was pushed to add 4, and he felt like that might be too many. But
yeah,
I mean, the truth is, all of a sudden you go from values to a long list of almost like agreements. Or look, if people can't even remember them, the chance that you're gonna be living them is tricky. And that you're trying to distill down to 3, 4, maybe 5 things that you can look at and say, if we hit a road bump, if we're in a dilemma, can we look at these and will these guide us through? So that's number 1. Number 2 is, be careful to go down this path of what you aspirationally wish you were, versus, especially as you start to get some traction, you get some employees, like, what is it really? Like, what do we want? Distill what's really there, the values that are truly starting to unfold, and do the work of uncovering. Again, we talk about like chip away at your values are there. It's about just chipping away and finding those, and really distilling those. Number 1. So you don't have to go grab them from outer space. Look around your organization and say, what's gotten us to get this initial momentum? How do we operate? What are we behaving on? What do we believe deeply? So uncover what you have versus going to look for them. And then finally, as far as the behaviors go, I mean, I think that's part of your journey. I think everybody should be on the lookout. I think recognition is a great way. What gets recognized gets repeated. So organizationally, of setting up systems where you can call people out. You have recognition systems that you can attach to certain behaviors. Like psychologically, that's a great way to reinforce your values. And then I think also like, yeah, using like your social channels or other sorts of platforms, like have people call them out. And over time, if everybody's looking, you will distill and be able to start to like put a list together. And that's one of your, maybe your objectives from your people leaders is that we're going to use all these tools to find the best examples and create a list of 15 behaviors under each one of these that we've seen over the last 2 years, not because we went on some mission just to uncover those, but we defined what it was about. We let our organization bubble up and tell us where they saw these in action. And then we put those together, and then we could use that as an onboarding tool or something to look towards over time. I imagine an organization, if you get 10 behaviors for each of your values, you've probably pretty well captured something that's going to live for a long time. The last thing I'll say is that values can change. Your organization can grow. But what I'll say about that is that I think there are points in organizational culture. If you have 4 founders and 6 employees, you need to develop something and you get to 100 employees, you may need to relook at it, which is fine. But here's what I'll say. Once you propose and put values on a group of individuals and we adopt them, we all like subconsciously feel ownership. The leadership can't just come in and change them and say we have new values. Like that will be very disruptive. So if at any time you want to rethink it, you really need to go back and go across our whole organization, say, okay, we've grown, we're out of alignment with what we thought. Do the same exercise, but do it with your larger group. If they are not part of the process, none of us like to be told that, these are our values and they're shift and that's going to put on you. Inherently, there's a lack of safety or trust that comes along with that. So be very careful. You don't own your values once you open those up and propose them. Everybody owns them. So you have to treat it as full ownership to every employee, from your first day junior employee to your senior executives.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you've thrown out some really good stuff for the first audience question here already, but I'm going to ask it anyway because Melody Young, thank you for throwing it out there. She says, we're working on recreating our company values and ensuring staff engagement. We have 1,400 staff spread across 35 sites. Can you talk through some tips to maximize staff buy-in? So you've definitely covered a couple of those, but I'm sure you've got a whole laundry list of other ones.
Staff, the first thing is I would say, again, not 1,400 people, right? There's a lot of people.
A lot of people.
We're not just, if you really look at humans and how we operate, we never really were designed to come together 1,400 people to build a widget, or do something like that. So this is, I would say, like, the human piece is remembering that we're building something that's not kind of how we existed for many, many years. So we're building something unique. It sounds like you've landed on something. First, I would say, are you using any sort of tool to listen? Are those values resonating? Have you come up with values that 50% of your organization don't feel like either are in alignment or they feel like they're seeing leadership living those values every day? So I would start by asking questions, like both starting with curiosity individually, asking the questions, but also asking your organization, are these the values? Are these the right values for us? Is this how that you believe the values that are going to drive us towards success? And do you see the leaders around you living these values? I think that's the beginning of the buy-in, is like, wow, they listen and they care. And then if you find out no, you go back and say, here's what we heard. And we feel like 3 of those we're doing really well and 1 we're not. So these next 6 months, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Around that, we're going to report back. So it's the iterative process, and then do it. Report back, follow through with what you said, and repeat. Let's listen again. I think in that cycle, you'll start to understand either, 1, the values just aren't right for us, and we're trying to squeeze the wrong thing into the wrong hole. Or number 2 is you'll start to like build that up, and it shows that we care, we're listening, and we're taking action. And now I'm getting into my kind of Culture Amp survey stuff, but nothing worse than asking questions. Asking questions and listening is different. In our organizations, we can get a lot of data out of your HRIS or your applicant tracking system or out of your Salesforce system, and no one knows the difference. You just get to pull as leaders. You cannot do the same thing with surveys. You don't get to just go pull data, because what happens is if you just see it as I just want data, and you never respond back, there's a reciprocal process when you start to ask people. If I ask you about how you feel about work, and you come back and say from 1 to 10, I give it a 3, and I say thanks, and I disappear.
So
not
right. I mean, but like what, like we've all experienced that. And how do you feel? Like, you're like, do you even care? So if you're going to ask those questions, you have to follow up with like, we heard you. This is what we heard. this is what we learned and this is what you can expect next. Keep it simple. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but do what you say, follow through and repeat. And I think with this, like the work is in the work, right? There's this top layer we're talking about, but there's the human layer of watching our leadership listen, respond, and take action that makes us feel like, oh, we're in good hands. I'm being listened to and cared about here.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
so good.
That's great.
I'm gonna
You're kicking me under the table here. It's time.
We did promise the audience that we'd keep it to 30 minutes. What I propose is I feel like there's a great conversation going. I'm gonna, for those who are on the line, we'll talk about a couple of the really cool takeaways, and then we can keep running through maybe a few additional questions for those who wanna hang on. So I'm just gonna share my screen.
Thanks, Jason.
Here.
Good questions, dude. Thanks for sending them in.
So we've already run through one of the questions. I actually have a bunch of follow-up questions. In terms of some of the takeaways, so for everybody who attended, we actually prepared a pretty darn cool infographic. It's the 5 key takeaways on how to build a culture that's resilient and enduring. And we really want to deliver on this promise of offering really great tactical advice from senior people. So no actions required from attendees. We're just going to email this out to everybody who's attended today. And then I'm going to switch gears. Obviously, myself and the folks over at Trailblazers, we represent organizations. And if you're looking for any help in one of our key areas, we'd love to be there to support you if you're at all interested. And so maybe I'll let Rhys kind of talk to what I believe is a great offer from their side.
Yes, we offer this culture type assessment. There's some details in the slide, and we can follow up in an email. So I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but basically you would get to run through a culture type assessment with Jerry and I, an hour of free time to talk about what type of culture would work best to align with your strategy and how to get you there, some of the gaps and how to cross some of those. So like I said, 1 hour, there'll be a couple of conversations, a little bit of data collected, and you get some real value out of that conversation.
Awesome. And I'm going to launch one more poll in a moment that'll allow you to participate in this. I highly encourage you guys to take advantage of this. And again, I represent Bucketlist Rewards. So if you do, in fact, want help with an employee rewards and recognition platform, I believe we have an outstanding platform. We've worked with some great organizations like Royal Bank of Canada, everything from financial services to the NBA team, Orlando Magic. And it's a great platform. If, for example, you have a lot of employees in a large geography, it makes it very easy to recognize and reward company values and really bring your culture to life. And I'm just going to launch this survey. And then we'll get back to some great questions.
Yeah, and while you're launching that, just say, also, if you're interested in performance management, listening to your employees, go to cultureamp.com. You'll see with CultureAmp, the way we show up in the world, there's a ton of resources. There's a ton of information designed for anybody thinking about this. Even if you're not a client, it doesn't matter. So go check that out. If you're enjoying this conversation, I think you'll find some real value there. And if you're thinking about your engagement or listening to your employees or the whole spectrum of performance management, manager one-on-ones, and you're listening, we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, I'll back you up on that one, Craig. There is a incredible amount of free and valuable content that's available through CultureAmp, client or no client. So yeah, awesome. Please go there.
Very good. So I'm going to wrap up this survey.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I think we should, we've got some other questions that have come up on the Q&A. Maybe we'll take one of those. And then I know you've got some burning questions. I got half of my questions still left to be asked here, but we won't take up that much more time, but I'd love to get a question from our participants again.
Yeah, some follow-up from Melody here. She's saying, we don't have any values decided yet, and we wanted to get staff participating in creating those values. So a bit more of a statement, but I'll turn that into a question for you, Craig. What's I know you talked about some monitoring, surveying. What are you seeing working really well in terms of going into your current employees and understanding what are the values that have made it successful and helped us get there?
Yeah, first of all, I think you have an opportunity at hand that, not just understanding your values, but what a great way to come together. That the things that we help build, we support, right? So if you're bringing your people in to be part of the process and they feel like they help contribute towards building what it is, they're going to be much more feel sake of ownership in what it becomes. So I would say, number one, see this as an opportunity, have fun with this, enjoy it. What a great opportunity. what have I seen that's successful? Look, there's something I really like we do at Culture Amp, and I'll tie this back. But what we do is when we in our induction, which is I've learned Australian for onboarding.
Right.
I didn't at first. It's like, what is induction? This seems strange to me.
Yeah.
What we do is we do a session with everybody where we spend time, like an hour and a half, oftentimes with our leaders, where we talk about individual values. So we like let people explore what are your, what do you bring to the table as your values? Then we talk about our values and we have a conversation on what do those mean and how do you think your values do or don't fit into that? And I think that's an interesting one because it's allowing the individuals, like I said, we all bring different values to the table. I heard the head of Warby Parker at the time, she said, Warby Parker does this thing where they give 1% of all profits to glasses in the world. It's awesome. She's like, not every one of our employees is moved by giving glasses to others in the world, but they are moved by being part of a company that means something, is doing something in the world. Yeah. So like, so it's like, how do we, same sort of thing, how do we latch on? So what I would say in your case, you don't have them, is I would start to run sessions, number one, talking about values in general. Like, what are the values of your people? Are you seeing themes and kind of the kind of people that are attracted to your company that are staying there? And with that information, I would start to do some discussion sessions around, are there trends and things that we think as an organization are values that we should, that these values latch onto that kind of tell us about ourselves? Explore that, go back. Here's what we've come up with. What do you think? Does that resonate here? Use it as an opportunity to start that conversation. It doesn't have to happen overnight. And maybe just, it takes 6 months, the complete, you're in that. Is you living some sort of value? We care about you. We listen, we're building this together. I think that journey, both helping people like think about their own personal values and starting to explore what they think, that they see the values around them that help them come to success. You're very quickly going to see some real themes and you'll probably get it down to 8 or 9 quickly. And then the work becomes, how do we distill that? Do some of those, maybe can we compact them into one that helps us? Which ones do we think are like a sub value, but not one of our driving values? But I think the most important thing is the way you go about it, not it itself. That bring your company together, use it as an opportunity, get to know each other, send that signal that we care. Here's how this is going to look, and like uncover them together. And again, if you find the wrong values, you can always renegotiate your values, and things do change over time as long as you just do it like we talked about before in a good way. So yeah, bring people in. Collectively do it together. They're there. You just have to kind of chip away and find out what are they that's gotten us to this point.
Yeah, great.
This is not a question from the audience, but my personal question. You talk about wanting to make work better, and you see so much aggregate data. If companies on the whole could solve a single problem for employees, what would that problem be? Wave a magic wand and this improves the employee-employer relationship for 60% of the population.
I'll tell you, consistently over the years, one of the highest drivers of engagement. So what we do is we have engagement as an outcome, right? So we have a few questions that identify engagement, and then we look at all these other questions and we relate those back inside of organizations to how do so yeah, I might find out that, our workspace, only 30% think it's favorable, but it has very low relationship to overall engagement. Like don't put your money there. Invest in something else. So to your point, one of the always at the top is open and honest two-way communication, right? So I think that it's really, that's, keep going back to this kind of in one of the questions you had written that we get to is like this idea of storytelling, or we're humans fundamentally. We've only been doing this game for a dot in our like longer term existence on this planet. I think we are pack animals. I think we naturally look for leadership. We look to leaders. We are supposed to be together in groups. And I think that's where that open and honest two-way communication comes into place. I would also say the other one is really building that empathy muscle in your organization and being able to see individuals as people, as humans. So in that conversation, you're really listening. It is a conversation. And then the other one would be that the people feel like they see the leaders in their organization living the values that they're being asked to live every day themselves. Those two, that alignment's off. We all know it. You know what it's like when you have somebody following. It's not a good feeling, and we create subcultures that are usually, again, not even designed to support our organization. They're designed to support our self-preservation. So I would say those two things. If you're focused on that, you're open and honest two-way communication. Our leaders living the values that you're espousing to your organization.
Yeah,
Okay.
that rings
That's awesome.
so true.
Yeah, I have one follow-up question. I'm sorry, man. I'm so interested in the data that you've got there. But my follow-up question would be, are there any of like kind of the base level conditions of work that you think we should change? Like the stuff that we just assume is normal. I'll give you an example, like an 8-hour workday, or like pay should be private, or those types of things that, you know, you see that stuff come up and you're like, if we just switch one of these base level assumptions that we're making about how work should work.
I'm gonna go big and then I'll go a little smaller. My answer at a big level is no, and this is why, because I don't want to be pigeon. Like when I talked about culture, is like, what are we trying to achieve, right? So I mentioned the military, right? The 82nd Airborne Division can get 70,000 people anywhere in the world in 24 hours. Like that's what they do. Think about the culture, the way we do things around here to do that. That doesn't mean everybody has to, we're all going to talk and we're going to decide, like that's command and control, that's drill, that's routine, that's like boom, right? So my point is that I want to tell every company, like, what are you trying to achieve? And what is the way we do things around here that's going to do it in a good way, that's morally and like your values are aligned with doing that in the world. So there's that piece, but I will drill because I want to answer that question. Maybe more of an aspiration. I'd like to see in more organizations. I mean, maybe it can't be everywhere. Maybe it's not in the military, but look, this whole thing, I don't know if some of if your audience has read, there's a book called Prime to Perform, Vega Factor. Lindsay McGregor and Neil Doshi wrote it. It's awesome. And they use a lot of research around motivation and data. And what they talk about is kind of the things that we've been using to drive up to this point around motivation, economic, financial, and inertia. So you got your paycheck I can take, I can promote you or not, you know, emotional pressure. And that's how we've done things. What they're saying is research shows that really play, purpose, and potential drive better outcomes. But aside from that, I want to go back into those three. Inertia. I didn't get it at the time how powerful inertia was. And I've been digging into that and thinking about it. And what we do a lot of things because to change the way we do it is so much energy. We just kind of have to continue on the path we've been on. To have a moment in time where inertia in many ways is just stopped. I think that when this thing starts to warm back up, we're gonna have a real opportunity to rethink things we just couldn't, even if in the best intention, didn't have the ability to do before. So what I want to see is us rethinking our organizational structures. What does it mean to let go of this old model from the Industrial Revolution around command and control and data flow to a more distributed model where we can be the things we say we want: psychological safety, lack of competition and cooperation. We want people that feel like they can be creative and pivot. Like that doesn't happen in a highly command and controlled environment. And if we can go to more like self-leadership and open this up a bit more and more leadership, less management, I'd like to see people more empowered. And there's a flip side too, because what that means for people, like if you're going to be empowered, you have to show up and take responsibility. So that's my big hope for all of this, is that we can really, like, there's so much written and spoken about alternative organizational structures. This moment in time will allow us to rethink how we structure our organizations.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Very aspirational.
Craig,
that
was amazing. I do have one really important question for the audience. We are contemplating putting together a mastermind group, which would give you guys access to people like this, and of course, access to one another, to share best practices. But let me just launch this question, and I'd love to get audience participation. So the question really is, would you be interested in participating in an invite-only mastermind group of senior communicators and HR professionals?
Yes.
I love that.
Great.
While you're doing that, that makes me think about something I do want to speak about.
So
yeah, please.
Culture Amp, we've spoken a lot about our tools, our software, but something that's always inspired me is like we're a company about our why, about really like leaning into a better world of work and that it's possible. And then also, how do we do that? And we've done it through our events and our community building. Last year, I was asked to help start rethinking our community and building chapters. So we launched Culture First Community around the globe. It's 30, right now we have 35 chapters. But if you go to culturefirst.com, you can learn more. But the point is we have communities putting on events all over the globe, having these conversations. And if you want to start these conversations in your local community, you can also reach out to us and we can begin that conversation. So I think that ties into this mastermind, or how do we,
that's
I love it. That's
for
great.
us, it's how do we bring together people that really believe a better world of work is possible and are willing to do something about it. No matter what angle, you don't have to use or not use Culture Amp. We want to build the world's largest community of people around that. So do check that out.
That's awesome. Again, while this is happening, we have another audience question here, and it's a good one. So it's from Nick. He asks, is there an overall difference in strategy for culture building and longevity in high turnover industries versus low turnover industries? So what are you seeing in differences in approach for those types of
How do we do things around here? If you're a grocery store and your employees are people that are, and then going to school or moving through a transitional life. I mean, I imagine most employees in a grocery store, that's probably not the long-term goal. How do we do things around here? How do we show up in a good way, knowing that people are going to come and go? Right. So I would say, are you having high turnover because of your culture? Then I'd say you might want to look at the behavior. Where's that misalignment? What's happening? Why are people coming and where are they going? Right. Understanding where they're going is often important. However, if you said, look, it's just, I'm in the restaurant business, right? I'm in hospitality. Then I think it's about, again, going back to listening. Who are they? What are their needs? What are they looking for in the world? What does this job represent? And how can we craft a job that's this two-way relationship, that they're showing up and supporting us collectively in our mission to feed people, to give them a great experience. At the same time, we're showing up to take care of them as they go through school or transitioning. I think of Mod Pizza, company we don't work with, but I love Mod Pizza, and they're very focused on supporting their communities they're in. They know that a lot of the people that work there, they're trying to be the best sort of fast food environment. They allow their employees to chip into this like global fund from their paycheck. And as long as you contribute something to it, you have access to it in case of emergency, right? So they know a lot of people might have health insurance or might have a car problem that they just can't, that could destroy everything, that they can make a request and get $400 to fix their transmission from that fund as long as they've contributed. So it's not that there's one answer, that might be the right answer, but you can see where they're coming from. They're saying, this is our population. We want to support this group and help them. They have scholarship funds they also support. So helping them, go to school and get an education. They'll hire people that have criminal records as a second chance. And also I love that fund that they do that's just available. If you hit a rough patch and you need some money, you can apply to get some out of that fund. But it's that relationship and that sends a deeper signal of, we know you, we care, and we're doing this together. It's not just about take from you. We give you a paycheck.
That's right.
We care about you, right?
I think if I can add, Craig, there was something else that you said earlier. I led people in culture in high turnover industries for several years, and you talked about keeping your values simple, keeping. And I think that was something that worked for me, was let's keep knowing us simple at this organization too, because we know that they're here for the summer, or they're here for, the average tenure is less than a year. So let's not make it really complicated to know us and to know how we do things here. The worst thing that I hear is, when people go, oh, it's going to take you forever to figure things out around here. And you go, oh, it should not do, especially in in any company, but especially in high turnover industries. Make it easy to understand the culture and people and how we do things and what our purpose is.
Yeah, make it simple, right? It doesn't have to be complicated, especially in situations like that. The role's probably not crazy complex. So keep it simple, what we're doing here and why we're together and what's the value we bring to the world. I love restaurants and like Zingerman's in the Midwest, or these there's a grocery store that always gets spoken about. I just love these where historically they're really tenuous environments, and there's one that stands out and does it completely different, and just or Lululemon is a great example, right? They have their meeting in the morning and they pump each other up and they go they have stuff, they care, they don't just let it be, they care about their culture.
That's right.
Excellent. Well,
I think
there's one more question from the audience.
One question and then I think we should.
I think it's an important one to address. So Michelle Deese says, I love what I'm hearing, and I'm curious if the Masterminds conversations will have more diversity in the panel. And Michelle, certainly hope so. We're all from very small companies, so we didn't have other options, but understand what it looks like to have three white guys sitting up here in front of everybody when we have four white guys, including Craig, sitting up here in front of you guys. So we definitely hope so, and we would look to work to make sure that.
And thank you to that person for writing it. Thank you for speaking up. I did notice when I logged on as well, and that we all have to keep working at this and looking and asking these questions and calling ourselves out. We can all do better.
Awesome. Everybody, thank you so much for your participation today. Speaking of mastermind groups, we had over 70% people say they wanted to participate in a group like this, which is awesome. A ton of you. So stay tuned for more details on that. Craig, thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
It was awesome. I love it.
Better chatting as a group.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks so much for your time.
Can't wait to see you up here in Vancouver, man.
I can't wait to get back. I love Vancouver. I cannot miss it. I can't wait. And our chapter up there is awesome. We have an amazing chapter going. So, definitely culturefirst.com. Check out, find a chapter near you. Vancouver's hosting events virtually right now. Go be part of this community.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right, everybody.
Thanks everyone. Appreciate it, man.
Have a great Tuesday.
Go out there and build culture.
Thanks.